What's up, everybody? Brady Fiel here, coming at you with a review of the new As I Lay Dying album, Through Storms Ahead, that was released this past Friday, November 15th. This was one of my most anticipated albums of the year this year. As I Lay Dying were a key band as far as me making the transition from rock into metal. Like, I'm not exaggerating when I say that the Breaking Benjamin to As I Lay Dying to Arch Enemy to Black Metal pipeline, it exists. But I do have to preface the video by saying that I only am going to be talking about the music in this video. Controversies aside, the only thing that I am talking about in this review is the music, the quality of the music, and how I feel about the music. So, that being said, let's get right into it. This album follows up 2019 Shaped by Fire, which I just talked about actually in my top 10 albums of 2019 video, so definitely check that out if you're curious. But that was their first album after their hiatus, we'll call it. And the album saw them coming back with a bang. Like, I think it was a great album. Some of the best songs of the band's career, in my opinion, were on that album. There were several things I liked about it, but maybe my favorite part that kind of was new compared to their older albums was the very much improved vocal performance of clean vocalist and bassist at the time, Josh Gilbert. He gained this awesome just rasp in his clean vocals that I think made him a lot more unique sounding and less generic than As I Lay Dying's previous album. But now we have a essentially completely new lineup for this new album, with the exception of course, frontman Tim Lambesis and guitarist Phil Segroso. So the burning question for me immediately was, is this still going to sound like As I Lay Dying? And the singles made it very clear that it does still sound like As I Lay Dying. Clean vocalist Ryan Neff, also of Miss May I, is definitely a really good fit for this band. He definitely just fits right in that metalcore sound that As I Lay Dying pioneered. And his voice also sounds very modern. And he's just a very technically good vocalist. Like, there are several moments on this album where he really gets up there in his vocal range. And it makes for, at times, some of the most refreshing and epic moments on the whole album. On that note, though, something very interesting that happened with this album that I didn't expect is that as far as the singles go, especially the first three singles, Burden, Cave We Fear to Enter, and We Are the Dead, I wasn't really feeling them that much. Like, I liked them, but I didn't find myself coming back to them very much, like, at all. But when I listened to them in the full album context, with the songs around it obviously in full album context, they make for, like, some of the best and most refreshing moments on the album. Like, after the opening sequence of the intro track Permanence, which does have some cool melodies in it, and A Broken Reflection, the first full-length track on this album, Burden just feels like such a step up from Broken Reflection. And Broken Reflection isn't a bad song. It just feels really familiar. Like, it feels like they're kind of just stuck in time with this song. And that does kind of happen on multiple points throughout this album. But getting back to my main point here, Burden is one of, like, the most lively tracks on here. When that clean chorus hits, it actually really pushes the momentum of the song forward, which in commercial metal like this, especially the whole metalcore thing between the scream verses and the clean chorus, that's kind of difficult to do, and Burden just executes that so well. There's also some really good chord progressions in that song on the guitar. There's some cool drum fills. Some of the most technical drum parts on the album are on Burden. There's that breakdown that kind of like starts on the 2 beat and kind of feels like it fakes you out a bit. Like, both solid songs, but Burden just packs way more energy and feels like it has way more momentum and weight in it than Broken Reflection does. And then We Are the Dead follows this, which is the only track on this album, actually, that is fully screamed. I was kind of hoping that this wouldn't be, like, the heavy song on the album, because, like, it is pretty straightforward, at least when you take into account context. Like, on Shaped by Fire, you have the song Gatekeeper, which, listen to these two songs back to back, you'll kind of see why I'm a little disappointed. But, I mean, again, it's still a solid song. Like, it's energetic, it's heavy, it's got some real thrashy riffing going on, which I like. There's also that stomping pre-chorus riff that I think is cool, but I also can't help but be a bit disappointed at just how, like, the vocalists, the song features Tom from Chelsea Grin and Alex Terrible from Slaughter to Prevail. The vocals on this song just really blend together a lot. Like, at times I almost can't tell who's singing. Or screaming, obviously, but you get what I mean. So I'm a little hot and cold on that song, and I do wish that they had heavier moments on here that were a bit more technical and just less kind of straightforward than We Are the Dead is. But the song Whitewashed Tomb follows this, which was probably my favorite of the 4 singles that released. And it's actually interesting with this song in that if you saw my brief track review of it, and I also talked about it in my best songs of October video, like, I love the song, and I even said that I tolerated the whoa-oh vocals, which is, let's just say, rare. But in the album context, I kind of don't like it anymore. At least the whoa vocals. The rest of the song I still think is awesome. I love that pulsating guitar lick in that main riff. But the whoa vocals, that bridge section in the end of the song definitely waned in appeal to me. And the title track kind of takes that idea that the main riff on Whitewashed Tomb established with kind of that pulsating guitar lick over the main riff, and it kind of just does it again, but in a way that's just a little bit less interesting sounding and less catchy. I will say though, Tim's vocals in the verses are probably my favorite on the album as far as his vocals go. He sounds a lot more just full and dynamic as opposed to kind of monotone like he does sound on parts of this album, but I'm going to get into that later. The chorus of the song is okay. Overall, this is a very middle ground track on this album. Although I do actually really enjoy that catchy bridge riff that kicks in like right at the 240 mark. The Void Within, it's fine. Again, kind of a middle ground track. I like the halftime chorus. It has definitely some of the more catchier, clean vocal cadences on here from Ryan. But again, these songs just feel so familiar. Like, this feels like very, very safe territory for As I Lay Dying. Strength to Survive too. I like the chorus, how it's got that pounding snare drum and kind of like that call and response thing going on between Tim and Ryan. But it's got kind of an underwhelming main riff. Gears That Never Stop kind of has that layered guitar thing going on with the distorted and the clean guitars in the verses that actually sounds pretty cool. There's also those changes in timing going on in the bridge with that solo over it where it kind of goes back and forth between having a triplet feel. Thought that was pretty creative. But again, like, the chorus of the song is underwhelming. It's really annoying when you have so many songs where they have cool parts displaced throughout them, but then there's other parts in the same song that just turn you off. There's a lot of that on this album for me. The second single, Cave We Fear to Enter, is the second to last track on here, and although I, again, kind of wasn't feeling it when it first dropped, it's a huge breath of fresh air near the end of this track listing because it's sung mostly clean. In fact, I actually wish that it was only clean sung. It arguably has Ryan's best vocal performance on the whole album. And like, when Tim's vocals kick in, it's like, I want to hear more of what I haven't heard yet. It just, again, feels so familiar, and it's getting a bit repetitive at this point. I do enjoy the closing track on here, Taken From Nothing. It, again, is one of the more melodic cuts on here. I think it has some of the best and most emotional melodies on here that really pair well with the emotional lyric. I especially, again, love Ryan's vocal melodies in the chorus and his cadences. Just, it's really catchy, and especially that kind of send-off that he has at the end of that chorus. It just is so emotional. It, once again, kind of goes back and forth between that triplet feel for the solo. Again, pretty cool. But, I mean, I've been tiptoeing around it, but I gotta say it, like, Tim's vocals on this album, as a genuine fan of this band, it pains me to hear it, but I just feel like he's getting less and less dynamic as a vocalist. Like, at least 2/3 of his fucking cadences on this song, on this album, are the same. Da 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 da. Just listen to it. It's the same shit, at least on 2/3 of the album as far as Tim's vocals go. Don't get me wrong, there's slight deviations. Like, sometimes he'll slow it down. Da 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 da. Sometimes he'll speed it up. Da 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 da. Sometimes he'll like end and like a more climactic high scream and kind of ascend it. Da 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 da. He'll make like a small deviation in the rhythm, like da 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 da. This was present on Shaped by Fire too, especially listening back to it, but it's way worse on this album. Tim's a talented vocalist. And as a genuine fan of this band for many years now, I know he's a talented vocalist. But he's got to get some new cadences, man. His parts on this album make for some of the most drab, repetitive parts on the whole album. Ryan, though, from a technical standpoint, sounds awesome, although I do think his vocals are a bit overproduced, in a sense that they just sound really, really polished. And as a result, especially the clean choruses on here, tend to sound a bit generic. Also, no, production-wise, I'm not crazy about the rhythm guitar tone. I think they could use a bit more of a crunch to them at times. And this album overall is very safe. Like, I don't think that's necessarily a deal breaker here because of the new lineup, and it's their second album since they came back, so they don't really want to rock the boat. I get that. But as a longtime fan of this band, despite kind of them plateauing stylistically from Shaped by Fire here, in my opinion, I still find myself enjoying this album for the most part. But I do think that if they kind of maintain that plateau for the next album, assuming we get one, that's where it would start to get problematic. This album gets a 20 out of 30 for me. As always, thank you guys very much for watching. Remember to hit the subscribe button for more rock and metal related content. Please comment your thoughts on this album below. I'd love to know if you liked it or not, what your favorite tracks are, how you would rank it in the discography. Until next time, I'll see you guys later. Peace.